Late morning sunlight slanted through tall windows at Leland High School's multi-purpose room, setting the linoleum floor aglow and casting the rows of folding tables into sharp relief. Along each table, student artwork, watercolor landscapes, papier-mâché sculptures, mixed media collages, crowded elbow to elbow, creating an improvised gallery that smelled faintly of acrylic paint and cafeteria food. Under the fluorescent lights, small clusters of art lovers, parents clutching coffee cups, teenagers in hoodies, faculty members in crisp dress shirts, drifted between displays, murmuring praise or politely nodding and moving on. At the far end of the room, where judges' placards fluttered on empty stools, stood Keon Harris's centerpiece, a sprawling canvas nearly 4 feet wide. Its surface throbbed with color and pattern, every inch stitched together by bold black lines, tracing the winding streets of his neighborhood. Inside those ribbons of pavement, bursts of emerald green marked community gardens. Sky blue patches denoted hidden ponds, and tiny red dots flagged his grandmother's stoop, the corner store, and the playground, where he and his little sister spent summer afternoons. The canvas pulsed with life, and belonged more to possibility than to plain cartography. Detective Paul Crane, invited by the school's community outreach coordinator, arrived just as judges gathered to cast their ballots. His uniform was neatly pressed, navy trousers, silver badge polished to a harsh gleam, and his boots clicked decisively on the floor. He carried a clipboard, and halos of authority hovered each time his mirrored aviators slid down his nose. Approaching Keon's painting, Crane spared a cursory glance at the placard in front. My hometown, paths and patterns. Keon Harris, grade 11. He frowned, lips flattening into a stern line. Bending closer, Crane studied the tangle of lines and color blocks. He tapped the corner of his pen against the canvas's painted surface, leaving a faint smudge of black. Looks like a kid's doodle, he muttered aloud to the other judges, voice carrying across the hush that had fallen over the nearby audience. A mother paused mid-step, eyebrows knitting in concern. A trio of seniors whispered under their breaths. Keon, standing a few feet back in olive cargo pants and a faded basketball jersey, felt heat rise in his cheeks. He clenched his sketchbook, a smaller, earlier version of the same map, against his side, every muscle in his frame tightening. Crane straightened, clipboard tapping his palm. Maps are for surveyors, not for art contests, he declared with clinical certainty. His gaze flicked over the crowd, gauging reactions. A polite cough here, an approving nod from one judge. Keon's heart pounded so loudly he was sure the detective could hear it. When Crane moved on to the next piece, an oil painting of a sunset, the teen drew a ragged breath and stared at his canvas as though seeing it for the first time. In that charged silence, Keon's disappointment settled like concrete, but beneath it flickered a spark of something bolder, a promise that his map held secrets no outsider could dismiss. Keon trudged home under an overcast sky, the weight of Detective Crane's dismissal pressing on his shoulders like a leaden backpack. Each step along the cracked sidewalk carried echoes of that sneer. Looks like a kid's doodle, not a map. He could still feel the detective's pen smudging the corner of his canvas, a gesture that felt like erasing his very voice. Birds flitted overhead, their calls sharp against the dull drone of passing cars, but Keon heard only the pounding of his own heartbeat. A gust of wind tugged at the edges of his sketchbook, and he clutched it tighter, as if holding on to the statement of who he was. Inside his bedroom, the afternoon light filtered through threadbare curtains, illuminating stacks of art supplies and unfinished projects. His mother's gentle hum drifted from the kitchen. She was baking cornbread for dinner, and the scent of butter and cornmeal offered a warm contrast to Keon's cold determination. He set his canvas against the wall and paced the narrow space, the wooden floor creaking beneath him. His gaze kept returning to the tapestry of winding streets and hidden alleys he had painted, each line drawn from memory and care. In that moment, the map ceased to be mere artwork. It became a lifeline, a testament to the intimacy he felt with every crack in the pavement and every lamppost in his neighborhood. With a sudden surge of conviction, Keon grabbed a fresh jar of acrylic paint and a set of fine-tipped markers. He perched on the edge of his desk, leaning over the canvas as if it were a vital document. Slowly, purposefully, he began to annotate, tiny blue crosses marking seldom-used shortcuts. bright yellow circles around every flickering street lamp that could guide someone through dark blocks, and bold orange arrows pointing toward the abandoned rail trail, where he and his sister Marisol once chased fireflies. As he worked, his breathing steadied. The sting of humiliation morphed into a fierce resolve. Every symbol he added was a declaration that his knowledge of these streets was precise, lived, and invaluable. By the time dusk settled outside, Keon sat back and surveyed his work, now a multimedia labyrinth of color and code that pulsed with hidden wisdom. Sweat beaded on his brow, smudging a streak of crimson paint onto his temple, yet he felt more alive than he had all day. He rolled up the edges of the canvas to protect his annotations and gently tucked it into a tube beside his bed. In the quiet aftermath, the distant clatter of dishes in the kitchen seemed to cheer him on, and Keon realized that this map, once mocked as mere scribbles, would soon prove to be a beacon in the darkest hour. That evening, the Harris family gathered at the Linden Community Center for their annual summer barbecue, the air thick with the scent of grilled chicken and cornbread. Twinkling strings of festoon lights draped between oak trees cast a warm glow over folding tables, heaped with potato salad, coleslaw, and lemonade. Laughter and music wove through the crowd as neighbors, black and white, mingled under the open sky. 7-year-old Marisol Harris darted between tables, clutching a half-eaten hot dog, her pigtails bouncing with every excited step. Keon's mother called her back for a fresh plate, but Marisol slipped past, chasing a stray soccer ball toward the playground's edge. Within minutes, the celebration turned frantic. Marisol was nowhere to be found. Keon's heart dropped as he saw her abandoned bike, pink streamers fluttering from its handlebars, lying in the grass beside the oak tree. Nearby, a half-drunk cup of lemonade sat tipped over, its sweet liquid staining the mulch. Panic rippled through the crowd as someone shouted, "She's gone!" Parents abandoned plates, and the DJ's turntable stuttered to silence. Detective Paul Crane, off duty and mingling by the food table, snapped into command, barking into his phone, "Unit 12, I need all available cars. Child missing, possible abduction." Sirens wailed in the distance before patrol cars screeched into the gravel lot, headlights carving through the dusky twilight. Uniformed officers fanned out from the picnic area, flashlights bobbing over picnic benches and under shrubs. Crane directed teams, one to canvass the surrounding streets, another to secure the perimeter. Each officer's footsteps crunched on gravel and scattered charcoal briquettes as they combed for clues. Yet no footprints led away from the bike, and no witnesses could say which direction Marisol had run. The playground slide and swing stood eerily still, playground mulch undisturbed. Overhead cicadas droned, indifferent to the mounting fear. As the first hour slipped away, Crane's jaw tightened. Standard procedure offered no answers. Radio checks returned silence, and K9 units found only the ghost of a child's laughter. In the gathering gloom, with only the distant glow of police lights and the last strains of abandoned music, Keon realized that his annotated map, once a school project, might be the only hope of finding his sister before the night swallowed her trail entirely. Before dawn's first light, Keon burst into the precinct lobby, his annotated canvas clutched against his chest like a lifeline. The fluorescent bulbs overhead hummed as uniformed officers sat slumped behind desks, littered with coffee cups and printouts of Marisol's photo. Detective Crane looked up from a tangle of radio calls, his fatigue etched in the tight lines around his eyes. Keon didn't wait for permission. He unfurled the canvas on Crane's desk, the vivid symbols and hand-drawn legends sprawling across the surface. Officers peered over monitors, curiosity ignited in their weary faces. Crane set aside his phone and rose, irritation flickering into interest. "What is this?" he asked, voice brusque but curious. Keon pointed to the cluster of yellow circles marking every street lamp between the community center and the rail trail. "My sister always follows the path with the working lights," he explained, voice steady despite the adrenaline pounding in his veins. He traced the narrow alleys hidden behind rows of townhouses, routes the officers had overlooked in their grid search. "She's scared of the dark. She'd take the safe way, not the main road." Crane leaned in, studying the coded arrows that highlighted the old service gate behind the center and the dotted line leading to the overgrown rail trail. He frowned, catching sight of a tiny blue cross at the culvert entrance. "You're saying she followed this path?" he repeated, skepticism warring with hope. Keon nodded, swallowing hard. "She showed me how to get there last week when we chased fireflies. She loves the wildflowers by the tracks." A tense silence fell as Crane picked up his radio. "Unit 4, priority reroute. Search team, focus on alleys C, D, and E. Check service gate and rail trail culvert. Bring K9. The room snapped into action. Officers grabbed flashlights and radios, maps were annotated with Keon's markings, and a K9 handler hurried past with a German shepherd at attention. Keon folded his arms, heart thudding as Crane met his gaze. The detective's stern mask had softened into something like respect. "Good work, Harris," he said gruffly. "Let's find your sister." In that charged moment, the teen's meticulous art project, once dismissed as doodles, became the blueprint for hope, guiding seasoned detectives into the very shadows they had almost ignored. Within minutes of Keon's impromptu briefing, Detective Crane marshaled a lean strike team at the edge of Linden Community Center's overgrown parking lot. The faded asphalt was cracked by tufts of grass, where morning dew still clung like a fine mist. Crane swept his gaze over the dozen officers assembled, each outfitted in tactical vests and clutching flashlights, and barked orders with the urgency of a train whistle. "Team Alpha, follow Harris's service gate shortcut," Crane commanded, pointing to the rusted iron gate half hidden by kudzu. Officer Diaz and two partners clambered over the low fence, flashlights cutting white arcs through the tangled vines. "Team Bravo, cover the north alley," he continued, gesturing to a narrow passage framed by trash bins and chain link. "Dog handler, take the rail trail path, start at the culvert entrance." Keon raced beside Crane, canvas tubes strapped to his back like a makeshift satchel. His breath fogged in the cool, pre-dawn air, every pulse a drumbeat of fear and determination. At the service gate, Alpha paused as Crane knelt to inspect a footprint in the soft mud. A small sneaker tread framed by the sketches marked X. Crane nodded, and the team followed the footprints through the overgrown pathway, prickly weeds tugging at pant legs. Meanwhile, the canine handler set the German shepherd's nose to the ground at the culvert mouth, the yawning steel pipe beneath the embankment that Keon had highlighted in bright blue. The dog's ears perked, and it pulled forward, yanking its handler down the narrow trail where broken concrete met tangled weeds. Keon sprinted alongside as the beam of the handler's flashlight danced across mossy walls. At the halfway point in the rail trail's gloom, Crane's radio crackled. "Team Bravo found her bike in Alley D. No sign of Marisol. Moving on." His voice trembled with relief and restraint. Minutes later, the handler's firm command, "Easy, girl, find her," sent the dog nosing into the darkness. Seconds stretched until a soft whine cut through the night's hush. Up ahead, balanced precariously on a bank of slippery stones, lay Marisol, dirt-smudged and wide-eyed but safe, her tiny frame curled against the culvert wall. Keon burst forward, tears mixing with sweat as he skidded to a stop beside his sister. "Mari!" he cried, crouching to scoop her into his arms. She clung to him, sobbing relief. The German shepherd nuzzled her gently, tail wagging in reassurance. Detective Crane arrived moments later, flashlight illuminating the scene like a beacon of hope. He knelt beside Keon and Marisol, voice thick as he radioed dispatch. "Suspect found, child safe. Send EMS for a quick checkup, but she's okay." The first light of dawn crept over the horizon, spilling gold onto the wet trail as other officers converged, flashlights bobbing in greeting. As Crane lifted Marisol into another cop's arms, he caught Keon's eye and offered a curt nod of respect. The teen, his canvassed map, now a testament to salvation, stood drenched in triumph and exhaustion. Around them, the rails and weeds seemed to sigh in relief. In the race against time, Keon's intimate knowledge of hidden paths had turned a terrifying search into a life-saving homecoming. Marisol's sobs echoed in the narrow underpass as Detective Crane and the strike team's flashlights converged on the damp, moss-covered walls. Keon knelt beside his sister, brushing strands of hair from her tear-streaked face. His voice trembled as he whispered her name again and again, relief and fear warring in every syllable. Around them, the German shepherd wagged its tail and licked Marisol's dirt-smudged hand, grounding the frantic energy of the moment. Officer Diaz reached out with a gloved hand to help Marisol to her feet, but Keon held her tight. His little sister felt impossibly small against his chest. Crane cleared his throat softly, careful not to startle her, and knelt at their side. "You're safe now," he said gently, his badge catching the first pale light of dawn that filtered through the tunnel opening. "We've got you." Marisol nodded, clinging to Keon's shirt, blinking away tears and the faint sheen of dew. Outside, the rest of the team filed in, creating a human corridor of concern and curiosity. Paramedics arrived, their strobes painting the concrete in urgent blues and reds, and knelt to check Marisol's pulse, ask simple questions, make sure she wasn't injured beyond shock. Her eyes widened at the sudden rush of hands and voices, but when Keon lifted her onto a waiting stretcher, she reached back to squeeze his hand, a silent promise that they were together. Crane stood back as Keon climbed into the ambulance beside his sister, the annotated canvas tube wedged between them like a silent witness to their journey. He watched the paramedics secure Marisol's seatbelt and offer her a blanket, then removed his hat, gripping its brim as if in prayer. The German shepherd pressed its nose against the door before the driver signaled and rolled down the window. Crane placed a hand on the dog's shoulder, nodding in gratitude. As the ambulance's siren wailed to life and they rumbled toward the hospital lights, Keon leaned over to kiss Marisol's forehead. "Never run off again," he whispered with a half smile, tears still wet on his cheeks. She managed a small nod. The canvas tube slipped from between them and rolled gently onto the ambulance floor, its secrets now etched into reality. Detective Crane watched them go, feeling the tight knot of tension in his chest dissolve into a fierce respect for the teen whose art had guided them through darkness and back to each other. That afternoon, the precinct's briefing room buzzed with reporters jockeying for position, their microphones and cameras aimed at the polished wood podium. Fluorescent lights overhead cast everyone in stark clarity as Detective Crane stepped forward, flanked by Keon and his mother. Marisol perched on a folding chair beside them, clutching a teddy bear and peering curiously at the flashing bulbs. The air smelled faintly of coffee and printer ink, mingling with the stainless steel chill of the witness stand microphones. Crane cleared his throat, grasping the podium's edge as he surveyed the crowded room. His voice, measured and sincere, filled every corner. Today we witnessed not just the rescue of a child, but the triumph of local knowledge and art over conventional procedure. He gestured to Keon, whose rolled canvas map leaned against the wall, its vivid annotations a silent testament to his insight. Keon Harris's map provided the critical lead that saved his sister's life. His attention to detail, once dismissed as just a doodle, became our most valuable investigative tool. A murmur of agreement rippled through the gathered officers and journalists. Crane continued, "In light of this extraordinary contribution, the Linden Police Department is launching a Neighborhood Insight program. We will recruit and train local youth to collaborate with detectives, offering their unique familiarity with every alley, trail, and back gate." He paused, eyes meeting Keon's, then presented him with a commemorative badge plaque etched with the department's crest and the words, "Honorary Search Advisor." Keon's mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, while Marisol reached out to touch her brother's new badge with wonder. Keon himself stood straight, pride and humility mingling on his face as he accepted the plaque. Reporters clicked shutters and scribbled furiously. Video cameras captured Crane's final words, "Let this be a lesson. Every voice matters, and sometimes the smallest details hide the greatest truths." After the formalities, the room emptied into the crisp afternoon sun. Neighbors and officers gathered around Keon for handshakes and pats on the back. Mayor Lucia Jordan arrived, flanked by community leaders, and enveloped the family in a warm embrace. "You've shown us that art and community go hand in hand," she said, smiling. "We'll display your map in City Hall to inspire all youth to share their visions." As the crowd dispersed, Keon unrolled his canvas for a few curious onlookers. He pointed out the coded symbols, street lamps, service gates, the rail trail culvert, and explained how each guided the search. Officer Diaz, who'd led Team Alpha, nodded solemnly. "I learned more from your map than from any briefing," he admitted. That evening, the Harris family returned home, the porch light glowing like a beacon in the dusk. Keon carried his badge plaque inside, placing it on the mantel beside family photos. Marisol leaned against his side, her small hand warm in his, and whispered, "You're my hero." Keon ruffled her hair, the weight of the day's events settling into grateful exhaustion. As the front door clicked shut, Detective Crane watched from his patrol car across the street, tipping his hat before driving off into the gathering night. In the silent street, the echoes of sirens and the laughter of a reunited family mingled, a reminder that respect, once earned through understanding and collaboration, can transform a community forever.